Thank you very much.
I'm
Thank you, Kieran, for inviting me. This is great, and I'm really yes, lovely to have Grace doing this too. So, two different versions of hedgehoggery. This is a slightly interesting talk for me to do. I tend to do either very rude stand-up comedy about hedgehogs or talks to the Women's Institute groups. This is falling somewhere between the two. Um, Hedgehogs and their ecology. I've been studying hedgehogs for a very long time. I realized as I was saying to somebody recently that it was nearly 30 years, that actually it's nearly 40 years now because I'm getting exceptionally old. What I'm going to run through with this section is just the basics about what hedgehogs are, why we should bother about hedgehogs. Grace is going to get on to the slightly more difficult stuff about how we can do that, because I'm really keen that we understand. I really feel that the more we understand about hedgehog ecology, the more we can apply that to how we do things to help hedgehogs along the way. And that's first, here we go, first slide in. So the main thing is, why should we care? People do often ask me this. And part of it's simply down to the fact that they've got this really strong public image. And that's particularly important. We want people to get engaged with helping the natural world. And sometimes it can be very difficult to lure people in. It can be a bit of a nebulous concept to helping to save nature, or that the beasties out there may be a bit removed from us, a bit unobtainable, a bit, well, scary, bitey, flighty. The hedgehog has many characteristics which make it very accessible to us. And that's important because not only can we do things to help hedgehogs, but it gives us an opportunity of forming connections with the natural world, which can then move on to help a whole bunch of other stuff too. If we've got hedgehogs, it means there's hedgehog food in the environment. Hedgehog food, as we will see through this talk, mostly macroinvertebrates, the bigger bugs and beasts. And these are absolutely crucial for many other species too. The oops, that wasn't doing what it's supposed to do. The hedgehog has such a really deep connection with our culture in this country. Grace and myself have just been in Berlin at the European Hedgehog Research Group, and there all of the other countries represented look towards the United Kingdom as this place with a particular passion for hedgehogs. So whether it's back with Mrs. Tiggy Winkle and Beatrix Potter, or with the Alice in Wonderland stories, but actually across the world, we've had ancient Egyptian hedgehogs represented by that ceramic one in the middle from the Ashmolean Museum. Slightly more modern ceramic there from Etsy, but Brothers Grimm carried hedgehog stories, and more up to date. We've got Pam Ayres' fantastic poem, The Last Hedgehog. Really recommend you that. And to give an indication of how much material there is out there, I even wrote an entire book on the iconography of hedgehogs, which I think some people in my life thought was a little excessive. So this is a hedgehog out in daytime. The reason I use this picture is illustrating a few key points. Hedgehogs out in the daytime are probably poorly. The reason this hedgehog, I photographed this hedgehog, was because a friend had said, I found a hedgehog in my garden. It's the middle of the day. What should I do? So I charged around, asked them to put some food out for the hedgehog, and then made it pose, or rather made my son pose with the hedgehog. This is something which you can't do with most species in this country. It gives my son an opportunity to get this close, and he still remembers it to this day, so 10 years on, still remembers getting this close to a hedgehog. Hedgehogs are a fantastic way of creating these points of connection. And that I will keep reiterating that it's really important that to make people remember why we should be caring about nature. And the hedgehog is perfect for that, as every time there's a vote or a poll for the nation's favorite wildlife icon, favorite wild mammal, whichever one it is, the hedgehog always wins. And in this one, Britain's national species, I upset so many of my ornithological friends by pointing out that the robin came in fifth. Two hedgehogs sorry, three mammals and a tree beat the first bird. This means that people will invite us to talk about hedgehogs because they love hedgehogs, but it means also that we get a chance to talk about all of the other things. Without those beetles, we don't get hedgehogs. We need to have a whole robust ecosystem. You end up talking about planting flowers to attract the pollinating insects, and it's like, well, hedgehogs aren't going to catch those insects, but those insects are going to lay eggs, and those eggs are going to turn into grubs, which the hedgehogs can eat. So we've got all of these different connections. The point of this is it's about ecosystem, using one species to be able to further our understanding of a wider ecosystem, and then maybe getting people engaged to do things about it. So now a little bit about hedgehogs, so that what Grace talks about is set within a different context, or a clear context. The Western European hedgehog is the hedgehog we have here. There are arguably 17 species of hedgehog around the world. They are taxonomists are always having debates and discussions about these things. There are hedgehogs all the way from the west coast of Ireland to the east coast of China, from Norway down to South Africa. The hedgehogs in New Zealand were taken there in the 1860s from England. That was a bad idea. And the hedgehogs in North America were taken from Africa as pets. That also is a pretty weird idea. The Western European hedgehog ranges from Ireland through to the Czech Republic. But also, as you can see on the map, on the screen, ranges from Norway down to Italy and to Spain, showing what an amazing range of habitats they can cope with. They are our only spiny mammal. This gives them a fairly easy pointer when you're trying to identify them in the wild, much easier than mice and voles for the uninitiated. They are essentially glorified shrews. All those prickles on the back are modified hair. I really loved the idea that 15 million years ago, the hedgehog emerged as a hedgehog and went, well, that'll do, and stuck with it from then onwards. They are nocturnal. This is important because it gives an indication of the problems people managing land will have. If you want to go and work on the land during the day, that's when the hedgehogs are sleeping, therefore vulnerable. They are true hibernators. Again, leaving them vulnerable because during the winter, they are in a state of deep torpor. They're shut down the metabolism by up to 98%. Again, creating a whole host of problems. The only other hibernators are dormice and bats. And they are a habitat generalist, which may sound like a really good thing. And we know they are, looking at their distribution throughout their range in Europe. But what that also means is that when we're looking in and saying we really want to protect hedgehogs, it's hard to sort of be specific. With something like a dormouse, you go, well, coppice hazel would be a great thing to protect. That'll help protect the dormice. But for the hedgehogs, we know they can cope with a wide range of habitats. And as Grace will point out, the hedgehog, despite this capacity, is suffering an enormous population decline, which then suggests something is going seriously wrong. Across the United Kingdom, their distribution. They are all over the mainland. A lot of the places where it looks like there aren't hedgehogs is actually down to where there aren't people seeing hedgehogs. But they also have habitats which they do not thrive in: moorland, marshlands, pine woods. Pine woods because they need leaves which are big enough to be able to create insulating layers for their nests. Marshes, wet. Moorland, again, similarly not a very easy environment for the hedgehogs to survive in. They've been introduced to a number of islands. Don't do this, please. The first work I did was up in Orkney, looking at the impact that hedgehogs were having on ground nesting birds, and similar projects have been running in the Outer Hebrides too. In fact, it is now illegal to do what people did in the 1970s, releasing hedgehogs into islands which didn't previously have them. And they are still absent from a bunch of islands in Orkney and the Outer Hebrides. I told you this is going to be a quick run through hedgehog life. The anatomy of a hedgehog. I really would love to have a taxidermy specimen like that, showing the sort of insides and outsides of a hedgehog. I'm not an anatomist, so I'm going to tell you what I have been told, that this is an unspecialized skeleton. It is very redolent, actually, of other invertebrate species, like a very big shrew. And the generalized limb and girdle structure, basically, that's not where the speciality of the hedgehog lies. Short neck, short tail. Their real thing, the speciality, is in their skin. Not only is it covered with the modified hair, which becomes the prickles, but also it's very, very big for their body. This is why taxidermied specimens of hedgehogs in natural history museums are frequently appalling, because the person stuffing the skin that they were sent stuffed the skin they were sent, and you end up with a sort of round ball with legs sticking out at the corners. They have a very, very special skin because, as you well know, they've got a brilliant defense mechanism. The first thing they do, it's actually not roll up into a ball, is they frown. And the picture there, number 1, shows a frowning hedgehog. The spines brought forward over the eyes, the ears, and the nose, protecting those vulnerable bits, whilst the hedgehog assesses whether this is a real threat. In the good old days with a camera which went click, taking a photograph of a hedgehog was a challenging thing because they react very fast to that sort of disturbance. And the hedgehog curled up, I would say that's actually not a good representation, but otherwise you just have a ball and you can't see where the nose is. A truly rolled up hedgehog, and they have this fantastic capacity using a muscle, which is like a drawstring bag, pulling tight to create an utterly sealed unit. It's called the orbicularis. And if you see a properly rolled up hedgehog, you don't really see where it starts and where it begins. And it is a very good defense against most predators and most problems, but obviously not all of them. Right. What does a hedgehog eat? Well, you've heard me refer to them as insectivore. In fact, that used to be a taxonomic grouping which they were placed into, but now they have been redefined as eulycotyphlans, which is great, you might think, until you realize it's the Greek for truly fat and blind. Though that is more of a reference to its gut rather than to the form of the hedgehog itself. They are insectivorous. They eat larger bugs and beasts. The data on this graphic here is collected by an old colleague, a late colleague of mine, Derek Yalden. And you see it has a relatively high percentage frequency of birds being found in the diet. This is from stomach content analysis of dead hedgehogs. The reason birds feature so highly in this is because most of the hedgehogs were supplied to him by gamekeepers who had been luring animals to their traps using day-old chicks and eggs. So birds aren't normally quite such a large part of their diet, but as you can see, mostly it's beetles, it's worms, it's caterpillars. Those are the key parts of a hedgehog diet, though more modern surveys show that they are also eating a rather surprising amount of pig and cow. Now, this is not suggesting that they've started working together to bring down these larger herbivores, and is more indicative of pet food contents. Though they will eat other things too, they're opportunists and will tackle whatever else they can find. They'll pick up on carrion, frogs, small mammals. They will, if it's in front of them and they can grab hold of it, they will. A friend of mine heard a noise coming from his chicken coop and went outside to find that a hedgehog was underneath the chicken coop and had got one of the chicken's legs and was trying to pull the chicken through the slats. That was never going to happen. The hedgehog departed his territory swiftly. Right, hedgehog behavior. As I mentioned they are nocturnal, so out at night. Hedgehogs out in the day are normally, but not always, poorly. And I will mention again at the end, as Kieran already has, the advice that we shall give for these situations. They are generally solitary. They do not form social groups. However, my social media feed, and if you're a hedgehog lover, maybe yours too, will be full of video footage from our wonderful trail cameras, which are all over the place, picking up squabbling hedgehogs, fighting hedgehogs. And that's because we've put the trail cameras out near food, and suddenly we're creating a concentration of food, maybe in our gardens. This is bringing an abnormally large number of hedgehogs to the same place at the same time. They are non-territorial. They just have home ranges they somewhat grumpily occupy and share. So rarely aggressive, just occasionally, and often quite noisy. Now, there's a short video here, which hopefully you'll be able to hear, but some of you might struggle. Let's see if it works. So you can see the hedgehog that is being attacked has rolled into a ball, prickles all out. The hedgehog doing attacking, spines are still flat. And this is how aggression tends to take place. It's never more than this. I've never personally seen injuries which have come from hedgehogs, hurting hedgehogs. It tends to be bowling them out of the way. Okay, the year of a hedgehog. I'm going to quickly run through this, and then there's a short video which does it even better. Hedgehogs should still be probably in hibernation, as you can see from the graphic, roughly November to February. However, things change. Things are changing now. Winters are warmer. We would hope that hedgehogs followed this pattern because it makes the life of the hedgehog rescuers much easier. Springtime emergence of hedgehogs looking to fill up their fat reserves. Probably the most vulnerable time for the hedgehogs is in March because they've depleted their fat reserves. Then we have courtship and breeding throughout the spring and summer. And if they have late young, then you end up risking having they used to be referred to as autumn orphans. These are youngsters too small to survive hibernation. This is a video put together by Nina from the People's Trust for Endangered Species, and it is.
Hello and welcome to Hedgehog Street. Our native West European hedgehogs are one of Britain's favourite mammals, but lots of people don't get to see them as often as they'd like. Everyone knows hedgehogs hibernate in the winter, but what's their yearly life cycle like? Let's have a look at a year in the life of a hedgehog. In the spring, hedgehogs emerge from hibernation. They've been hidden away for a long time, may have lost as much as a third of their body weight, so they'll need to replenish their fat reserves. A supplementary bowl of cat or dog food and some water can really help them at this time. Females start to search for nesting sites for when they are ready to give birth. Spring also marks the start of the mating season. Courting couples sometimes spend hours doing a mating dance, with males circling the females until they are ready to mate. Mating continues into summer, and competition can be fierce. Females are pregnant for around 4 weeks, and litters usually start being born in May and June. They're usually fully weaned by 6 to 8 weeks old. The hoglets stay in the nest for 3 or 4 weeks, then leave to go on foraging trips with their mother. They learn what's good and bad to eat, but also still drink their mother's milk. By autumn, hoglets are usually independent. Sometimes females have a second late litter, so the small hoglets may need extra food from humans to gain enough weight for the winter. Autumn sees hedgehogs trying to build up their fat reserves by eating lots of food in readiness for hibernation. They also start building their hibernation nests, which are made from leaves or straw. Winter is the season of hibernation. Hedgehog hibernation usually starts around November and lasts until March, though this can change depending on various factors, including weather, temperature, and location. Sometimes hedgehogs will rouse from hibernation for short periods, so it's good to have food and water available. Once the weather starts getting warmer, hedgehogs emerge, ready to start the process all over again.
So I have to say, I have never, in all of my time studying hedgehogs, ever seen a hedgehog yawn. And in that video, I've seen it so many times, and every time I see it, I find myself yawning. I think a deep empathic connection with hedgehogs being represented there. So I will just skim over these. As Nina's video showed, small litters 4 to 5, 3 on average make it through to independence. They're born without their spines, sort of obviously, but their spines are there under the skin, edemic layers of fluid-filled skin, which the fluid is absorbed after the hedgehogs are born, and then the spines emerge quickly. This means that it's much faster than if they were just being left to grow. The mother may well relocate the nest, though disturbance can result in them being killed and eaten, which is a shame. There's a short little clip of video here, which is I would love to see this happen. Here we go. This is a mother hedgehog, and it will always be the mother hedgehog doing this because the males play no role beyond mating, and she's relocating her young hedgehogs to a different nest for whatever reason. Something has disturbed the place where they were before. An absolutely amazing capture that somebody got in their garden. That is not a hedgehog I would leap in to rescue, even though it's out in the daytime. It's deliberately moving to another place. So they move all over the place. This is radio tracking studies showing how far hedgehogs will move. Our colleague Nigel Reeve was doing this work, and he showed that on average, males moved almost 2 kilometers a night, females around 1 kilometer a night, that a home range for males about 30 hectares, females about 10 hectares. This goes to show quite how much space they need to move. I begin a lot of my talks with the first slide is why did the hedgehog cross the road? And the answer to that is quite simply because we put a road where the hedgehog wanted to go. They need to move considerable distances. Marked hedgehogs which have been released into areas, have shown how many will move between gardens. This is the thing. It's like you think you've got your hedgehog coming to your garden. And yes, you may well have your hedgehog coming to your garden, but some gardens have 12 individuals, which have been marked coming into their space. Other hedgehogs have been shown walking 500 meters or more to a favorable garden. Sometimes hedgehogs appear once and then are never seen again. So we think they're on the move to somewhere else. One of the studies that the Hedgehog Society and the People's Trust supported was by Abby Gazzard. She radio tracked 28 hedgehogs around gardens and found that they were visiting on average 8 gardens a night. They tend to visit the back gardens, and they tend to spend more time in gardens with food and composting. This is kind of obvious. But what's interesting about that is how much they want to be in those spaces. They really do use those spaces. Our gardens are amazing habitats for hedgehogs. But if they find that they can't get between the gardens because of fences, walls, etc., they will then come back out onto the roads, cross roads. And so why did the hedgehog cross the roads? Because we built all those barriers in their way. One of the key messages from the Hedgehog Street campaign, which I hope you'll follow through on the leaflets for, is that you make a small hole, 13 centimeters in your fence, to enable hedgehogs to get between gardens. Her work showed that amenity grasslands were the least preferred type of habitat, though radio tracking work in Regent's Park, for example, showed that the sports fields were some of the least preferred places for a long time, until one year they decided that they wanted to use the sports fields. There is so much more to learn about hedgehogs, and I just wish we could sort of get inside their brain and find out why they're choosing to do what they're doing. So, right at the beginning, I mentioned they're nocturnal. They make nests, obviously not up in trees. They make nests which are down on the ground. You think about the name of the hedgehog, you'll know where the ideal place for a hedgehog nest to be. It would be in the base of a hedgerow. There is a really clear reason why they do that. It's because they need a structure in which to build a pile of vegetation, leaves normally, which they'll then roll into a heap, which is quite well insulated. Now, they have 3 sorts of nests. The daytime nests throughout the majority of the year can often be really quite sparse. I've seen them just push into a tusk of grass or just push under a few leaves, so under a tree. It depends a bit on the weather. The breeding nests for females and their young tend to be more robust, and the most robust are the hibernacular. The point being is, these are all places where they are vulnerable, because whilst they're sleeping, we may be out there doing stuff to our gardens, doing stuff to the land we manage. And that means that we're not going to know there's a hedgehog underneath that particular hedge. So as I say, they need a structure to pull leaves and then to be able. So this is why hedgehog boxes work for hedgehogs, though a friend of mine went to great lengths building his own hedgehog box and found that the hedgehog used the back of the box as the structure against which to build its pile of leaves. The hibernacular, similarly, it's a bigger thing, and it's that rotation of the hedgehog turning around, its spines combing the leaves into a laminate structure, which actually provides very good insulation. You don't want the hedgehogs getting too cold, obviously, and you don't want them getting too hot, because that triggers their emergence from hibernation and therefore uses up valuable food reserves. This is a photograph that our colleague Pat Morris took. This is sprawling brambles. At least 10 hedgehogs hibernated in here each winter when he was doing studies there. And this is perfect, absolutely perfect. However, for many managers of land, this is seen as untidy landscape. And the horrible story of this is that one year the land managers went in and tidied it up. They mowed the entire lot. Not only will that have killed all of the hedgehogs in there, but it's removed this fantastic habitat. I have a real desire to see the cult of tidiness disbanded. So please consider not being too tidy in your gardens. Hibernation is obviously crucial for them to survive. The reason that hedgehogs hibernate is because of the compromise they have to make. Those prickles, those modified hair on the backs of the hedgehog, come at the expense of a thicker furry coat, which would provide them with insulation. And so they've ended up evolving this strategy to be able to cope with winter, which is to shut down their metabolism. As I say, about 98% shut down. They are as close to dead as can be. If you find a hedgehog in a state of hibernation and you don't know whether it's alive or dead, if it's dead, they will tend to smell like they're dead. But if you very, very gently, if you need to know because you're shifting a shed or something, If you very gently just stroke the spines, and if they flex back again, then the animal is still alive. Leave it well alone if you can, as long as it's not in danger. There's a lot of debate and discussion about how much hedgehogs should survive to be able to last hibernation. And one of the frustrating things of this is that it's a much more nuanced debate than that. It's to do with body condition. What we do know, though, is that it's very unlikely for a hedgehog weighing less than 450 grams to survive hibernation. I must change this slide because, climate change seems to be having an impact. And arousal March/April, I would imagine all hedgehogs are now up, unless the spring is particularly cold by the end of March. Hibernation is not an absolute. They will move around the place. And again, this is significant. It means there is that moment, as the video showed, they will emerge from hibernation. Lucy Bierman Brown, another one of our lovely colleagues, did research on this, finding that on average they used 5 different hibernacula during the winter, and sometimes moving to quite considerable distances. Again, this is why I want to know what's going on in the mind of the hedgehog. Why did you choose to move at that particular moment? What were the things which disturbed you? Hibernation is a relatively safe time in the life of a hedgehog, even though they are vulnerable. It's accidents, drowning, those sorts of things. Obviously, if you get a sudden flood, the hedgehog won't be able to survive. Really, it seems clearly it's that emergence from hibernation, when all those fat reserves have been used up, is when they're at their most vulnerable. How old hedgehogs get to be? Well, this used to be simple. Pat Morris's work looking at the growth rings in the lower jaw of roadkill hedgehogs, and now what a job that was to do, found that very few hedgehogs reached 7 years old. When the hedgehog goes into hibernation, they stop growing. And so they emerge from hibernation, they start growing again, so you end up growth rings, and apparently the lower jaw was the easiest bone to get access to. But some more recent research has suggested some hedgehogs live much longer. But what you can see from this is that less than half of hedgehogs born make it to their first birthday. They are a vulnerable species, and we are making their lives far more vulnerable too. Again, moving on to what Grace will be talking about. If you find a sick or injured hedgehog, please call the British Hedgehog Preservation Society. The number's up there. The link has been put into the chat, I hope. And the website provides you with more information there. Even if it's in the middle of the night, the Hedgehog Society's got an answer phone, it's basically a phone tree system, will guide you to somebody who will be able to help. You will be able to get support and help for that. Main thing is, if you found an injured or sick hedgehog, you pop it into a box, put a lid on the box, give it some jam jar lids of water and some meaty pet food, and then leave it quietly whilst you find somebody expert to help. If you want more information, we've got the websites from Hedgehog Street, the People's Trust for Endangered Species, and the British Hedgehog Preservation Society. Pat Morris's fantastic book from the New Naturalists is a delight. But also, just because I've got an audience, there's 3 of the books I've written about hedgehogs so far. Anyway, thank you very, very much. I'm going to stop now, so you can stop recording.